This is the video for the indifference point analysis, example 6.1, page 147 to 148 in the textbook. In this example, we're giving three options. We've looked at a video that showed the break-even point, and we get different break-even points. So how do we know which one we should do? Well, we can do a crossover analysis, and that will show us at which point we are indifferent with one option over another, and at what points along a line we should prefer one option over another. So let's take a look at this. We have the formula for the indifference value here. We're going to set the workbook up like this so that we can take a look at this and then make some decisions about our options. We're going to put the data in for each option. So the common option has a fixed cost of 0 and a variable cost of $750 per shipment. The contract option has a fixed cost of $5,000 and a variable cost of $300 per shipment. And the lease option has a fixed cost of $21,000 and a variable cost of $50 per shipment. Now we're going to compare each of these. We'll use the absolute value because we're only going to do 3 of the possible comparisons. We could also do the reverse. For example, we're going to do common less contract or common to contract. We're not going to do contract to common. So you'll see that sometimes we'll get a negative value, but that doesn't matter. We're going to take the absolute of that and work from there. So in this first example, we look at our formula. Fixed cost sub 1 in this case will be common, and fixed cost sub 2 in this case will be contract. Same way with variable costs. So first of all, we'll take the common fixed costs less the contract fixed costs. We'll put that value in there. We see we're creating this, we're doing this quantity in our formula. Then we'll do the variable cost quantity in our formula. So we'll take the variable costs for the common less the variable costs for the contract option. We'll do these calculations in a minute. Now let's go down to common to leasing. So we'll take the fixed costs for the common less the fixed costs for the leasing. See again our quantity here in our equation. And then we will take the variable costs for the common less the variable costs for the leasing. And finally, we will take our contract costs, fixed costs, less our leasing fixed costs, comparing contract to leasing. And then we will take our contract variable costs less our leasing variable costs. Now we'll do this calculation equals, we'll use the absolute value function in Excel. We'll go ahead then and take the quantity that yields the fixed cost comparison, and we'll place that over the quantity that gives the variable cost and press enter. Then we'll just copy this down. And now we have our indifference points here. The indifference point between common and contract is 11 shipments. At 11 shipments, we're spending about the same. Common to leasing is 30 shipments, and contract to leasing is 64 shipments. But a better way to display this information, especially if you're trying to give a presentation comparing these options to a board or just your staff, is to put them on a chart. So what we want to do when we do this is take a look at our lowest value, and we want to kind of take a run at it. We don't want to start there. Let's back up a little bit. So since that's 11, I'm going to back up all the way to 0. Now, in this little table here, we're going to fill in some shipping quantities. These are subjective. You just put them in. You look at this low number here, and you look at this high number here, and we want to go a little below that. We're going to go a little above that. So I'm going to go start at 0, and I'm going to go by tens, 10, 20, and I'm going to go all the way up here to 64. I could go to 70. I think I'll go to 80. You could go to 70. As I said, it's just up to you. I'm going to go ahead then and do my calculation now, given this volume of shipping. And I want to make sure that when I do this calculation that I use my relative and absolute cell references correctly, so that I just type this formula one time. I don't want to type, what would this be, 24 formulas. I'm not going to do that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the value in B4 for common cost. This is the common cost, so common cost is 0. Now as I copy this across, I want this to move across, but as I copy it down, I want it to stay on that 0. So I'm going to press F4 twice, the F4 function key twice, and that will make absolute the row and leave relative the column. That will allow the column to move across, but it will keep the row from moving down. So there's my fixed cost piece. Now I'll add that to my variable cost piece, which I'm going to do the same thing for. I'm going to go ahead and make absolute the row reference, lock it there on that row, row 5, and I want to multiply that then times the shipment quantity for this go round. And in this case, I want to lock the column. So as I copy this down, I want it to move down row to row. But as I copy this across, I want it to stay locked on this column. That way I get my shipping, my cost for common. I can copy it down to here, and then I can copy this over. And then with one formula, I get all of my values. And I'll check, place the cursor somewhere in the calculated values, press F2, and yeah, sure enough, I'm using all of the correct variables for that calculation. I have the contract, fixed costs, and variable costs up there, and I'm pointing to the correct shipping quantity. So I'm in good shape. Now I'm going to go ahead and just make a line chart to illustrate this, and I'm going to speed this up a little bit. I'm going to let the wizard in Excel, the chart wizard, do a little bit of this work for me. I'm going to select the values that I want plotted in advance, go up to Insert, and then I'll select my line chart. Be careful, select this line chart right here. Don't select this one. You see it goes wrong. This is the one you want, the line with markers. So we'll select that chart. Now we need to adjust this shipment quantity. The X values down here, they're not correct. So we'll just make sure we've clicked on the chart. We'll go up here to our chart design and our select data. Now yours may look a little different. This is Excel 365, but you'll see the design tab up here when you select the chart. We'll select chart data. Now I want to go ahead and put in my horizontal axis labels. So I'll edit that, select this range as the labels, and there we go. Now we have a little chart that we can look at. I'll pull this up a little bit so maybe you can see it a little bit better. So what we get from this then is a visual representation of where we are indifferent for these different shipping options. And what we want to do is make a decision along this line, the lowest line. This is cost. So we want the cost to be as low as possible. We don't want to go up into here. This is not an option. I mean, we're not going to do this. And The information that we want to consider, one of the pieces of information that we want to consider as we look at these values is where are we headed in shipping? Are we scaling back? Are we doing less and less shipping? If we're doing less and less shipping and we're here, we don't want to enter into a long-term contract if in 6 months we're going to be here. So we might prefer the common carrier. If we're here and we're growing pretty rapidly and we think maybe in a year or so we'll be here, we may want to consider entering into a contract, and what the period of that contract is, that would give us some input into how long of a period we should look for in a contract. So this chart will help you with that decision-making process. It'll help guide the conversation as you talk about how you want to manage your shipping. That's how you do the indifference evaluation in Chapter 6.